Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Barbara Bigsby Boyd, the 3Bs. She is a member of the Alabama House of Representatives, and you had been a teacher for over 45 years. I honor you for your service. I want to speak with you about education. As you know, in Alabama right now, the education budget, which is separate from the general fund, is in surplus, about $250 million, if not more. The general fund budget is in deficit, about $250 million. Those numbers match up. You're a teacher, you know that. And so there's been discussion about whether the general fund should borrow money from the education fund. Should there be a unity of the two budgets? What's your sense?
My sense is it would not be wise to combine the budgets, because combining the budgets, you run the risk of having to cut some of those educational funds in the long run, or you run the value of supplies or grants or materials for teachers, library aids, and all of that. It's just too great a risk to combine the two budgets.
But as you know, Alabama is only one of 3 states that separates the budgets. One could argue that Alabama is the smart one of the 50, seeing that they separate them out. So because that Alabama is in such a minority on this issue, there's discussion that, you know, maybe we should follow the other 47 states and unify, because the argument goes, you know, we're all part of Alabama and all constituencies should be able to rely on each other when times are better or worse. How would you respond?
My response is, how are the budgets funded in other states?
Well stated.
A key point for Alabama as it relates to the education fund is that the primary source of funding is sales tax and property tax, whereas the other budget has certain amount of taxes but different.
So I've spoken with some folks, some of your colleagues, and what they have said is, we understand the argument that we should separate the budgets, but maybe we could bring some of those growth taxes that are in the education fund into the general fund. Because all the taxes that are growing and bringing in more revenue, they're in education. General fund has taxes that are flat. How would you respond?
That's a more logical way to do it, rather, in my opinion, than to combine the two budgets. Would be possibly to look at those taxes that are growing and see if you could transfer some of that without, in the long run, hurting the educational budget.
So where do you go from here? Where does the legislature go from here? As you know, as we speak today, the governor has signed the education budget, likely special session for the general fund budget. And so, you know, there needs to be some movement on this. The governor actually wants to raise taxes.
Yes.
To benefit all budgets, I presume. Your friends in the Republican side of the aisle are not in favor of that. So what's next?
Our primary mistake in Alabama as it relates to funding is not realizing the real issue. We need to take a stand in looking at for the future, not propping it up. For the last 3 years, we've had state funds, or we've borrowed from other funds, or we say we want small government, no interference from the federal, but we must realize that most of our agencies are matched with federal funds, so we're going to have to survive. But you can't run on a party platform of no new taxes. That doesn't make sense when it might in an election, but it doesn't make sense if you're going to reach all the people that you serve.
So we know the governor's been pretty firm that he wants to increase taxes at a certain level. We know that your friends in the House on the Republican side seem willing to consider it. Your friends on the Senate side have been less willing. So what happens next?
Well, a cliche, we refer to him as the House of Lords, and to us as the House of Commons. So I think the House of Lords probably feel like that whatever they say is found say, but it works both ways. Somehow, traditionally, we have got to get away from some of those old ideas and the way we have built and the way we look at those things. Number one, I think we ought to attack the issue of the budgets earlier in the session. But then the opposite side of that would say no, because our primary purpose for it is to just pass the budgets anyway. So if we pass them earlier from the political standpoint, you could just go home because you've done your mission and the other bills. So the reason that it's normally sat later in the session is simply because of the fact that you want to get in any important bills and issues that you have. And that's why you have to vote on the BIR before the budgets, which is the budget isolation thing, because the budget has not passed.
Another potential budget buster, we'll call it, or Alabama's prisons.
Oh, yes.
Oh, holy. So you know that in California, there was a case that went through the court system and all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And that court ruled that California's prisons were cruel, were unusual, were causing needless suffering and death. And California was forced to enter into a plan with federal oversight. Alabama does not want to go down that road. Alabama wants to keep control of its own prison system. So there has been a bipartisan effort toward prison reform. What do you make of the effort?
Some years ago, on the Prison Oversight Committee, there were no women. Initially, I established what was known as the Junior Tutwiler Oversight Committee, which lasted for about 2 years. Then in 2010 session, the Commission on Girls and Women in the Criminal Justice System was made a permanent commission which deals with issues of Tutwiler. The commission is made up of all agencies around the state that deal, a very good commission. We've made recommendations, some of them to the governor and to the House and to the Senate as to some of the issues primary that deal with Julia Tutwiler.
But you know that in 2014, the Department of Justice came out with a report which said that there had been sexual abuse and misconduct by male officers at Tutwiler Prison.
Exactly. I did a House bill to address that, which is on the record, but it's a matter of whether you enforce it or not, which deals with not only handling people who, it was called custodial, the bill, custodial sexual misconduct, meaning people under your custody, whether they were in prisons, city or county jails, or whatever situation. So there is already a bill in the Alabama codes to address that situation.
But we do know, Representative, that a bill has been passed to deal with the prison overcrowding crisis, reclassifying some of the non-violent, non-sexual, non-serious offenses, so there will be less, if any, prison time. The challenge, though, as I understand it, is that there needs to be funding. About $25 million, and that's a decent amount of money when the general fund's in deficit.
So the idea is you have a prison reform bill with no money to fund it, which means to me you're back to square one. So what's your choices now? Are you going to find the money, or are you going to let the feds come in and take over?
So
that's the real solution.
What do you anticipate? Will the legislature and the governor get together to find the money to avoid a federal takeover?
If I were in the governor's seat, I'd find the money.
Right.
But knowing my state, and this is someone might say, why would she say that? But knowing the pattern of my state, we can't find money sometimes until we are pushed in courts to do it. So all major decisions that have come from Alabama, education or anything else, really came from the federal courts, and there might be two reasons for that.
I want to have you come back and talk more about it. Her name is Barbara Bigsby Boyd. She is a member of the Alabama House of Representatives. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter Local Edition.